Super Mario Party Jamboree's minigames kinda suck. From what I could see online, the general consensus for the Mario Party Jamboree's minigames is that it's either a hit or miss for some. Some people think they're great, some people think they're okay, and some people think they absolutely stink. And after playing them multiple times and getting to learn every single one of them down to the T, I can say I fall in the category of, yeah, they kinda suck. First off, I think it's the sheer lack of minigames. Yes, there might be the most minigames that we've ever had, coming in at like 113 different minigames, but only about 29 of them are actual 4-player minigames, which means the rest are either 2v2, 1v3, 1v1, or extra minigames tied to extra game modes. Which means when you're playing on the boards, you'll be playing these same minigames sometimes over and over and over again, and it feels like a very small list if you played any of the boards a certain amount of time. So do I think every single minigame is bad in Jamboree? Not at all. I actually do have some that I've favorited, not a lot. I mean, I think it ended up coming down to like 10 to 15 different games that I thought were a lot of fun, but the rest are either just really mediocre or really just boring and not fun to play. Let me go through them with you. Down below, I'll place a mid counter, which is pretty much me saying that they're either bad minigames or just average or just something that's just not super interesting. They don't have to be terrible to be on this list, but it's just minigames that I thought were kind of boring. Snag the Flags is a minigame where you literally just run around a planet and collect random flags. You don't collect others' flags, you just collect any flag that's available, and when everybody gets all the flags, it stops. And it's like one of the shorter minigames in this entire game. You could probably finish within like 10 to 15 seconds. This is just an example of a minigame that I believe to be just extremely average and just didn't feel very creative. Hot Cross Blocks is a type of minigame that we see at least like 4 or 5 times in this game, where if you pick the same thing as another player, you don't get to progress at all. And this minigame can just go on for so long. Like seriously, it can go upwards to 2 to 3 minutes, maybe even longer if you just keep tying with other players. You're never making progression, it feels like. Yes, there is some strategy that can go into it depending on where your opponents are standing, but this minigame was always a drag and hardly no one, I mean like no one ever picked this minigame when it came up in the rotation. I hardly ever saw it when playing with boards because clearly no one wanted to sit for 4 to 5 minutes trying to figure out who's gonna pick what. Domination is a returning minigame, but I absolutely can't stand button mashing minigames because it's so easy to gimp. You are not getting in the 200s with just your thumb. And I found out online, thanks to a lot of people commenting towards me, that a lot of people are using turbo boosted controllers. Some people, like myself, have even tried to use a massage gun to press the button even faster. So almost every single time I play online, there's 1 or 2 players that are clearly always going to win this because they either have a massage gun or B, some type of turbo boosted controller. 3-throw is another returning minigame, and I love the concept. I think it's great, but almost every single time I play this minigame, whoever's on the ends are going to do the best, and it's just a consistent thing because the gold hoops in the middle will always be empty as it's moving onto the side of the left or the right player, even when it goes in reverse. So a lot of the time, if you're stuck in the middle as one of the middle two, you're gonna have to aim for the top or for the bottom and just settle for 1 point. Like I said, I love this minigame's concept. It's just kind of unbalanced, and I've seen it multiple times while playing online. Granite Getaway has to be one of my least favorite minigames in the entire game because it's so incredibly easy. You literally can close your eyes and just hold back on the control stick to run towards the screen and you'll be okay. With occasional block here or there to jump over, you will never ever lose. I've never seen a real player online lose to this. In fact, I noticed a lot of people pick this minigame simply to make sure that they can earn their coins, to confirm a win. It's so daggone easy. I mean, seriously, I don't know why it doesn't change up that much or why there's not other booby traps that can hit you in the room. It's just a couple of bricks on the ground, which could have made a really fun minigame really exciting. It instead really drags on and it's just not fun to play. I'm seriously not a fan of motion controls, and I know you can turn these off and that just limits the amount of minigames you can play even more, so I'm kind of forced to play with them, but there's some games that just aren't that fun to play where there's just moving your arm as fast as you can compared to the others, like Night Lights where you're constantly just moving it in a circle. I don't think minigames like this is fun. The same exact exact thing happens with Pickaxe Dash, where you're just constantly moving it in one direction, and literally you can finish in like 5 to 6 seconds. It's so incredibly short. Literally there's world records online of people finishing in 3 seconds, and I still don't know how they're moving it that fast. It's just moving the Joy-Con. Now there are some, like the triathlon, that's really fun, where you have to move it in 3 different ways throughout the course of the minigame, but one simple motion for a 5-second minigame is not a fun minigame. Well, I think I may have fibbed a few minutes ago, because Granite Getaway is nowhere near as bad as Gatekeepers. Gatekeepers is a completely random minigame, and of course, what's a Mario Party game without randomness? But this one is just so miserably boring, and especially if you're going against computers, because in the story mode, I felt like the computer always got it on their first try, where you needed to come in first in order to get 3 mini-stars. This minigame is just the worst. It's literally 5 keys with 3 gates, and you have to figure out which key goes into which gate. That's it. Yes, you can pay attention to what other keys other people used, but it's just not fun. Just sitting there trying to figure out which key goes where is just not a good idea for a minigame, and I don't know how this was actually able to become a thing. There are a lot of survival minigames in this game. There's one on ice, there's one on fire, there's one where you're on bouncy balls, and this one where you're on bouncing ant troopers from Mario 3D World. But the problem with this one is just the collision with other characters. Trample line is an absolute mess until there's 2 players left. The first 2 players will get knocked out in literal seconds, and honestly, if the 2 players that are remaining are just bouncing off of each other, tack on another 3 seconds. This minigame is going to be over before you know it, because so much bouncing off of each other's heads and falling back down and bouncing up and down on each other. I mean, it's just impossible to move around and even try to stay alive for more than a couple of seconds when there's so many people on the screen. Sunset Standoff pains me because it's such a good, fun idea, but the execution once again is just not there. If you're the one in the bonsai bill, you are absolutely destroying everybody. You have 5 rounds to hit every player. I don't know how it's physically possible to lose this game as the bonsai bill player. You can move all the way up to the very end of the track, but something should have changed with this. Maybe the rounds, maybe lowering it from 5 to like 3 rounds, or maybe making the bonsai bill smaller like a regular bullet bill, or maybe the actual moving area where the players have to dodge it a lot bigger as well. Another minigame that's completely unbalanced is Bruiser Bash. You're in this tiny little ring where one player is in this giant bruiser robot, and I find it almost impossible to not hit everybody out of the ring within the first 10 seconds. I mean, unless you're just absolutely not knowing how to move the machine, there's no way in the world you can escape or run away from this thing. Defuse or Lose is a 2v2 minigame making a return, but it's so incredibly easy to cheese, where you and your teammate can just literally stand in one spot and ground pound over and over again. Especially if one of you guys are on the crossroads of the 2 wires, you'll never have to leave the spot if you just continuously ground pound. And I just don't understand how this was a thing. I thought maybe I got into a lucky spot and then I played it over and over and over again. And even when I played online with other players, this happens so frequently. Jump the Gun is another returning minigame, but is a really good idea for a minigame. I'm not going to include it into the counter, but I am going to say this is an absolutely abysmal minigame to play with others online because of the lag a lot of the time, where none of my players have ever been able to just jump on the bullet bills without sliding off. So I'm not going to blame it on the game. I'm going to blame this one more on the online connection, and maybe it's a little difficult, or maybe my teammates are just always really bad at this one. Tricky Turntables reminds me of the boss battle against the giant womp from Mario Party 9, which was a really unique one. You had to kind of play off of the other players and what you thought that they were going to pick, but this was just boring and slow. You're slowly going through each round. I think there's a total of like 6 or 7 different rounds where you're slowly just sitting there at the table deciding to stand or stand off the button, and it just goes on forever, and it just gets to the point eventually where I just don't care. I'm like, take the coins or not, I don't really care. Coin Corral is just a hot mess, and I've seen this complaint from almost every single person that I've ever played with, and I can't blame them because I've had the same problems. The motion controls here just simply don't work. There's so many times I literally extend my arm almost smacking the TV just to get it to throw the rope, and it won't do it. Or even if you try little movements, it won't do it. There's so many times I try to pick the rope up after missing, and it just dangles on the ground, and it won't pick up. There's so many times where I capture a giant chest, but it won't pull with my teammate, even though I am doing an obvious pull motion. Once again, we need to just leave motion control minigames as a thing in the past. Please, just leave them out of the next Mario Party. Shuttle Scuttle is another one that's just boring every time it's chosen. Your job is to slowly make your way to the top with these really slow thrusters, and it really just comes down to where you position yourself. People are just knocking you into lasers, and it just, I don't know, it's something about it that's just not fun. It just feels like the shuttles are too big and bulky, and they just feel weird to control. I don't know, this minigame is always just a miss for me. Now we have the character spotlight minigames, and honestly I feel like these are some of the best in the game, honestly, even though some of them are definitely a miss. I do not like Mario's three-peat. The first one with Leaf Leap is okay, it's nothing special, it's something that we've seen time and time again. But Bumper Balls is literally a joke. You might get 1 or 2 players off, but a lot of the time 3 players always survive somehow, because there's just not a lot of kickback or recoil when you bounce into somebody, not even when you run into them really fast. It just feels like no one's getting bounced that far, and the only time someone's losing if there's a computer on the edge of the circle or something. And Shy Guy Says is fun, but if you're playing with anybody that's their first or second or even third or even fourth time playing this minigame, they're gonna get completely bamboozled. Literally by the 3rd time, Shy Guy will literally raise and lower each flag like 4 or 5 times, and you never know when he's actually gonna stop. It is so incredibly confusing, and you're always gonna see everybody drop out of the game by like round 3. Peach's Day Off feels more like Peach's terrible minigame collection. The first one, you're carrying presents and trying to dodge bitty buds, which sometimes is generally impossible how fast they move and how slow you move, and the fact that you bounce miles away every time you bounce off of another player. In her second game, guess what? It's once again a minigame of picking something that no one else does. Why does Nintendo think stuff like this is fun? Maybe one minigame in the entire game max should be something like this, but this is just not a fun thing. One of the last trays is always worth 12 points, so like everyone is going to choose it because it can literally change the course of battle. So literally if you want it or just want to prevent someone else from grabbing it, you're gonna go for it. And the final one is just one where you go around picking up gems for fireworks. It's just incredibly basic and brain dead. I mean, you see the color of the gem, you go run over there, pick it up, and take it back to your firework container. There's no real way to be bad at this one or to even be good at this one. You just see Jim, go run over there and pick it up. It's really basic. Look, I know we all wanted a Waluigi pinball game, but a pinball game that's over 170 seconds long and you're just sitting playing pinball is strange. Every time this is chosen, my friends just audibly sigh and we're sitting here playing pinball for almost 5 minutes long, and it's just not fun. It's all pretty much luck based depending on where the ball rolls or what type of bonus that you get. Some bonuses are way better than others. Not to mention, please tell me it's not just me, but the way the pinball actually moves feels like it has absolutely terrible physics. There's so many times you bump it up to one of the tunnels and it just kind of stops and rolls in a weird way every single time. It just feels like the pinball's physics are just absolutely bad. Rosalina's Radical Race is like Mario Kart on 10cc. I kid you not. You move so slow, and it's such a long course where it just feels like you're slowly finding some boost pads, doing some tricks, and following the super slow path. There's no obstacles, there's no enemies, and there's not a lot of boost pads during the whole course of the race. It's just a really slow snowboard race. Yeah, no one wants to play a slow Mario Kart, and I still hate the fact that they're trying to change Rosalina into this Queen of Snow like she's Elsa from Frozen or something. Why did they just start incorporating that? I know she has her own snow world in Mario Kart, but it's just like Rosalina isn't snow. Why is that becoming her identity now? Look, I'm glad that boss battles made a return. They're one of my favorite parts of Mario Parties 9 and 10, but there's only 5 of them, and they're pretty basic overall, some being way more basic than others, like Mega Stingbee's Stompers or something it's called. You're just stomping on a giant Stingbee. I mean, literally watch this gameplay. There's nothing else to this. Eventually he gets rid of some platforms and you're still just stomping on his head as he's moving back and forth incredibly slowly. And Bowser Crashers just feels so generic. Why are we on hoverboards and just slamming into him? Like, what even is this? I remember in past games we were in giant tanks, or there were multiple different phases, or he were throwing like death dice at you to see what he was going to hit you with and you had to survive on a platform. Slamming into him with hoverboards, it just felt so random and just strange, and it just didn't make any sense to me. But what about Bowser's Kaboom Squad? Well, we got this mini game called Skedaddle, where you just tap L and R. That's it. You do it to the beat. I don't know how you can possibly mess this up. Like, how do you mess up tapping L and R to the super slow beat? It changes maybe slightly, going a tiny bit faster and then a tiny bit slower, but it's just like a whack mini game. Like, why? But I think I can stop there. you pretty much understand where I'm coming from. These minigames aren't that great, and even the ones that I didn't include on this list, there are a couple out there that are still very average, that just aren't that fun to play. Like I said, there was only like a handful that I found to be a lot of fun. I like the preciseness of Camera Ready, where you had to take a perfect photo of what they showed you, and a lot of the time it was a complete battle to see who could take the best picture and if you could get as close to 100% as possible. I really love this one. Or Tilt-A-Golf, which is a fun motion control minigame where you had to tilt the Joy-Con in order to tilt the stage and drop the golf ball into the hole. I wish there was a whole minigame section dedicated to that. This led to The Edge, where you pretty much played chicken against the other players and you had to pay close attention to the toads and where they let go with the background and really calculate when you needed to let go. Unfriendly Flying Object was really cool, as you were in this toy-like area and you had to drop these giant spiked blocks in order to build structures. You could build a little wall to trap everybody on one side or try to flip them over in order to hit them with the spike on the way down. It was really unique. And like I said, some of the character specific ones were so good, like Luigi's Rescue Operation, all Luigi's Mansion themed and having to go through various different rooms solving different puzzles. I love this. Or the one where you're participating in a giant Wario game show with multiple rounds of memory or just counting or figuring out where Wario's gonna move. This was also a brilliant idea. As there are some really good gems in Mario Party Jamboree, there's also a lot of mediocre minigames and even some that are just outright bad. So I'm really hoping that this gets improved on in the next game. I know 113 minigames sounds like a lot, but please prioritize the 4-player minigames first. Make sure that there are a lot of choices for that, because a lot of us are playing boards and just want these basic minigames to choose from. Yeah, sure, it's fine to have all these extra modes like rhythm minigames and Bowser marathons and stuff like that, but overall they really need to focus on the core minigames that you're going to be playing the most of. They need a lot more creativity, because the ones in Mario Party Jamboree are mostly pretty average. But it's completely fine to disagree. Maybe you find all these minigames a lot of fun and you're fine with the short amount of minigames for 4-player minigames. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know why in the comments down below, and thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you head out, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.